Marvel is about to step up its game. Avengers: Infinity War is on the way in late April, and there's no stopping Thanos and his Black Order from coming to Earth and wreaking the place. While the Marvel Cinematic Universe has so often steered away from ing off their heroes in the past, they've somewhat backed themselves into a corner with this one. To properly set the stakes in Infinity War, people are going to need to. That takes us to where the movie will likely begin, with Thanos taking on Thor, Loki, and the remaining Asgardians following the end of Thor: Ragnarok. We've seen bits and pieces of this in the trailer, and it appears that Thanos is going to lay waste to what's left of Thor's people. But one major character may not make it out of the first few minutes with his life: Loki. Let's look back on Loki's story in the MCU, and why it seems inevitable that he'll be the first major death in Infinity War. Loki wants the crown too much. Loki made his debut in Thor before causing trouble in the Avengers. Marvel: The character was first introduced to us in Thor, played by Tom Hiddleston. He's Thor's mischievous brother with an eye on the throne, and he manipulates the would-be king into starting a confrontation that Loki knew would make their father, Odin, very angry. Indeed, Odin punishes Thor by stripping him of his power and banishing him to Earth. It's then that Loki ends up taking up power in Asgard, while his father goes into one of his very deep naps. He does whatever he can to keep Thor away, but eventually the god of thunder returns to Asgard to end the reign of his misguided brother. This is a major first step in the progression of Loki in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Next, Loki is adopted. Loki finds out he's not Asgardian. Loki learns he is not Asgardian in Thor. Marvel Studios: One of the biggest moments in Thor is when Loki learns that he is not actually Asgardian, nor is he of royal blood. Odin tells the story of finding a little blue baby during battle in Jotunheim, left there to by some unknown parent. He took pity on the boy, bringing him back to Asgard and raising him as his own, with the idea that Loki could one day bring peace between the bickering worlds. Having been lied to his entire life, you can imagine that Loki didn't take that well. He's the god of mischief, but he grew up in the shadow of his bigger, stronger, more popular older brother. Learning that Loki isn't the true son of Odin is a major moment where we can peek into the soul of the character and really understand his motivations, even if we disagree with them. Next, Loki is no stranger to Thanos. Loki teams up with Thanos. Loki teamed up with Thanos against his brother in the Avengers. Marvel Studios: Having been thwarted and lost from Asgard at the end of Thor, Loki reappears at the beginning of the first Avengers movie. He was been gifted a scepter from an unknown benefactor, and shows up on Earth ready to steal the Tesseract, which holds the Space Stone, one of the Infinity Stones, and bend humanity to his will. Considering that Loki is the god of mischief, not an evil supervillain, this was a bit much for the character. The brother that Thor grew up with was still in there, even if he had decided to attempt to rule the planet like a dictator. In the end, the Avengers overcame his forces, and sent him back to Asgard with Thor. Little did we know at the time, Loki had cut a deal with Thanos, who probably isn't too happy with his failure on Earth. Next, Loki pulls another trick. Loki redeems himself, or so we think. Tom Hiddleston sacrifices himself in Thor: The Dark World. Marvel Studios: After being deemed a war criminal and thrown in a cell, Thor comes to Loki for help in avenging the death of their mother in Thor: The Dark World. It's in this battle that Loki sacrifices himself to save Thor, dying in his brother's arms. It was a touching moment, and it may have been a fitting end for Loki, but it wasn't. The whole thing was just another one of Loki's tricks. He returned to Asgard in disguise, put Odin under a spell, and assumed the throne in his father's form. It was a clever move and confirmed once again that Loki hadn't changed at all. Next, Loki finally does the right thing. Loki helps Thor defeat Hela. Loki and Thor join together to defeat their sister in Thor: Ragnarok. Marvel: But once Thor discovers Loki's scheme, the pair return to Earth together to find Odin. They track down their father just in time to speak with him before he passes, which frees their sister, Hela, from her imprisonment. Have some fun hijinks on a planet run by Jeff Goldblum. Loki once again attempts to betray Thor. This time, however, Thor was a step ahead. It has become painfully obvious to everyone involved that Loki refuses to grow as a person. Eventually, he returns to Asgard to help Thor defeat Hela and save their people from annihilation. Finally, some character growth. The remainder of Asgard escapes in a massive ship while their world is completely destroyed in Ragnarok, intent on heading to Earth to take refuge. Next, Loki just can't help himself. Loki steals the Tesseract. Loki betrays his brother in Infinity War. Marvel: Here is where things get truly interesting. In a late scene from Ragnarok, it's heavily implied that Loki takes an extra moment to steal the Tesseract from Odin's vault. That's key, because the mid-credits scene showed Thanos' ship, which makes the ship holding the Asgardians look tiny, arriving on the scene. We're left only with the impression that this will be where Infinity War picks up. The assumption here is that Loki stealing the Tesseract somehow signaled Thanos and allowed him to track them down. The trailer for Infinity